one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed, that all men are created equal.
Get up, stand up for your right. Get up, stand up for your right. Get up, stand up for your right. Get up, stand up, don't give up the fight.
Hi, good evening, everybody. This is the 4th edition of Rod's Views Live on our podcast on Cape Conscious Media and Rod's Views. Today we're having a discussion with our third political party, the new entrant. We're talking to the newer entrants and so-called smaller political parties. We're giving them the space to share with us what are they offering and what they're about. Today we're talking to Angela Sobey. Can I call you Angela or must I call you Mrs. or Miss Sobey? What would you prefer?
I'm Angela.
Angela is good, okay. So you may call me Rod. It's
Thank
fine.
you, Rod.
So Angela, just some intro. I read through your profile that they sent me. So you're not really a politician. Although I see you were previously a councillor in Joburg.
Yes.
For which party was that?
For ActionSA.
For ActionSA.
That
okay.
was following the 2021 local government election where we did contest.
Okay. And then you left. Why? Because you're still supposed to have been a councillor then, isn't it?
Well, I served there, and then the party deployed me to the Western Cape because I grew up. I'm from the Cape, so I grew up here. And in deliberating around the most suitable candidate to represent the party, the provincial executive of the Western Cape, together with the Senate of the party, decided that they would ask me to come and do that.
Okay. I see you were born in the Eastern Cape and then you went to a nice little small dorpie somewhere in the Eastern Cape and then you came to Cape Town, to Woodstock.
Yes.
And you grew up there, or did you grow up in the Eastern Cape, or you grew up in Woodstock?
So,
and then from Woodstock you moved to Manenberg.
Correct. So I was born in East London, and my mum relocated to the Western Cape when I was 6 months old. And then at around 4 years old, she basically got frustrated with not being able to find a reliable nanny because the one woman that had taken care of me was also someone who, as a baby, I had these chubby cheeks and these slanty eyes, and I looked very, very Asian. So we lived in Woodstock, where tramway buses is on the corner of that. And at that point in my life, she would walk to the harbour, and she would go and solicit money from the the Chinese and Japanese carriers that were coming into the country, and then go and sit in the park and have herself a nice drink. And the final straw basically was when she put me onto a swing, and I was just left there, and I fell off the swing and I fractured my arm. And she took me home, and she just dumped me and made a beeline for it. And my mum discovered that I was very crabby, and every time they touched my arm, and it was discovered that I had fractured my arm. So the decision. I'm seeing a lot of myself.
Don't worry.
The decision she then took was that it would be best. Being from East London, my family is part Xhosa and part coloured. And I come from a matriarchal family, so my mum had two sisters, and the oldest sister was very much the matriarch in the family, and she decided that it was best for me to be sent to the Eastern Cape. And I was sent to family there that lived on a farm in Hogsback. And initially I stayed with a Xhosa nanny there, so learnt my alphabets, my nursery rhymes and so on. So in essence, Xhosa is my second language. And started school there, and at a certain age, I think I was about 7 or so, came back. And I didn't want to leave my mum then, so I stayed. And around some point there, we were moved. We had moved from Barron Street to another street in Woodstock, and the Group Areas Act, under the Group Areas Act, we were moved to Manenberg. So we moved into Helen Court, and I think we spent probably 10 years in Manenberg. And yeah, having grown up in Manenberg, and then with the political unrest and the disruptions and so on, I, in essence, then went back to East London to finish my schooling. Came back, lived in Durban for a while, 2-3 years, and then came back here and started working.
Okay. And I see you worked at the Department of Justice.
I did.
And then the TRC.
Yes.
And Parliament as well, but that Parliament was like a double job. So you did. I'm surprised they allowed you to do that.
No, it was not Parliament that allowed me. Like I was moonlighting. I needed to supplement my income. At the time I did that, I got into the Magistrates Court in Cape Town as an interpreter. So we worked as a court interpreter, and then I was sent across the road to assist in the family court with maintenance. And man, you don't earn much as a junior official in the system. And given my multilingualism, I got this freelance gig, and Parliament would sit in the afternoons, and we'd be called in, I think, from about 3:00 in the afternoon.
So you went to go and sit with the Hansard people and so on?
Yes, under Hansard. And yeah, so the more when I did that, the person that was doing the bookings booked me even more to go and interpret because I was versatile enough. I could quickly jump in with Afrikaans and with Xhosa and Zulu if they didn't have a Zulu interpreter. And it started to become a problem because now I was disappearing at lunchtime or, making excuses, not coming to work and so on. And it wasn't sustainable.
Okay. So why did you leave Department of Justice? How long were you there about? Why did you leave?
I was with the Department of Justice in different capacities. So even the time that I went, while I was there, moonlighting as an interpreter in Parliament, there was a time where I served in the Office of the Director General, then back to the courts whenever Parliament was in recess. And even my stint at the TRC was a secondment from the Department of Justice. So it was quite a stretch under the Department of Justice. And when I came back from the TRC, I actually applied to the CCMA, and I then moved to the CCMA and worked there.
So you worked at the CCMA for a while?
I worked at the CCMA as well.
Okay. So is there anything else you want to tell people about yourself? Remember, you're going to be a public figure should you get in. Anything you want to tell people about Angela that you think they should know about you?
Not that I can think of. I'm pretty much an open book. I don't have any smolanyana skeletons.
Not yet.
Well, please God, no. Fortunately rather, we work for a very, principled and ethical party where anything that doesn't correspond with your income, we've all signed up and agreed to a lifestyle audit. Okay. In fact, our president has challenged leaders of other political parties to a lifestyle audit. So Our party's values are very much about ethical leadership. So not only do you agree to subject yourself to a lifestyle audit, but also in the event that you are not serving your constituency. It's one of those things that the party doesn't take kindly to.
So, people are generally peeved off with political parties. South Africans, and especially here in the Western Cape as well. And you've not really been in politics. You guys are a newbie. Although ActionSA, you've been a councillor up in Joburg and so on. The Western Cape dynamics is a bit different, as you should know. So why did you decide to enter the arena?
The political arena in general, or the Western Cape?
The political and a bit of the Western Cape.
It really wasn't part of my design. I do, though, as an extremely spiritual person, believe that all of us has a bigger purpose in our life, and I've basically noticed, looking back in my life, every time I've decided that I'm going to do this, my life basically went that way every time I decided, and so on. And similarly, I worked as a management consultant, a leadership consultant, and we were consulting to some of the biggest state-owned entities. And by the time we got to 2019, being a consultant was almost something you needed to be ashamed of because of all the negative publicity surrounding that. But in that space, I had identified the absence of emotional intelligence as one of the contributing problems to challenges that corporates face. And having worked myself into that niche and having built up that niche, by the time 2019 ended, so did our last contract, and there wasn't really anything on the horizon. And I was in the process of setting up shop as a management consultant and EQ coach and so on. And COVID hit, level 5, and I was not prepared already for the virtual shift to the virtual space. And in just trying to figure that out, I got myself certified as a mediator because that linked back to my experience as a maintenance officer in the CCMA and so on. So it was a skill set that I had. Got myself certified, and
let me just help you. This is not a job interview, eh? So just tell us, why did you get into the politics?
Yeah. So what ended up in that period of trying to set myself up, I found myself unemployed for the first time in my life, in essence. And during the COVID, things like that 5 billion rand that went missing in 3 months, things like the PPE scandal. And I think something that I found very offensive as an African was the digging of 1 million graves.
Yes.
It was just something that I took huge offense to. So during that period, I was focusing on trying to get a set up shop, and I was listening to politics in the background. I've never actively paid attention to it except where it affected me. And I was hearing that Herman was setting up a party and so on, and I was following it. I mean, I really do respect him. And I was glad that he'd entered the space, and then I got a phone call, which, as a very good journalist would do, set me up in essence. The opening question was, what are my views on politics? And I went on a rant for a good couple of minutes about how disgusted I am, etc., etc. And the follow-up to that was what I thought of Herman, and I did a complete 180 about how
like him and all of that stuff and so on.
So we went and met with him. He invited me to join the party and the Senate of the party and so on. And then fast forward to 2021, I was responsible for a constituency of about 9 wards, organizing the election and so on. And I had also applied to be on the list. And I got in as part of the 44 seats that we got in the city of Johannesburg.
Okay. So, I read through your manifesto, all 70 pages of it, I think, yeah. And we're going to talk about a few issues. I'm going to ask you a few issues around, some detail around it. But what do you think, what is your key offering of ActionSA to South Africa?
ActionSA represents a political alternative and a credible political alternative. When we look at the challenges in our country, we have declared corruption public enemy number one, so much so that a few weeks ago ActionSA made an announcement around the fact that not only would we want to reinstate the Scorpions, or a unit like the Scorpions, but we would also take out the Zondo Commission report and prosecute. We identified 10 public figures that we would want to prosecute. We believe, we're a party that believes in the rule of law. And we believe that it is lawlessness at every level, from a governance level, at national, provincial, local government level, that has got us to where we are currently as a country. And so in response to those, not only are we saying that we will tackle corruption as a priority, we will look at it, we will attend to the issue of the rule of law. We've got a suite of 11 policies. And one of the biggest policies that is a priority to us as well is the issue of economic prosperity. So our economy is in essence in free fall from where we were, 15 or closer to 20 years ago, possibly. And the issue that we're sitting with is that we've lost investor confidence in our country. Crime is out of control. So the rule of law has a very key role to play in stimulating and growing the economy. Economic growth is a very critical factor, because in attracting foreign direct investment, in ensuring that we create an environment where the economy is growing and where businesses are able to participate, with a focus on small, medium, micro, medium enterprise businesses, as well as entrepreneurs. You know that our president is an entrepreneur. And we believe that there needs to be a conducive environment for businesses to flourish within a growing economy, so that business creates jobs, and that people aren't subjected to the lack of dignity of income grants. Income grants will be given where they are needed, but in essence, we need to create an environment where people can actually work. Those that are able to do so need to be able to work, and where everybody can participate in the economy.
Yeah, I read that manifesto and I smiled. Because some of the stuff that's in there doesn't link up to what your leader particularly maybe say publicly. But we'll get to some of that. So I smiled. So coming to the manifesto, and I see your Western Cape offering, you guys are putting that together on Thursday.
It's a civil society engagement. It's a stakeholder engagement with civil society, where we are hoping to engage with NGOs and community stakeholders across the board in the Western Cape, for them to come and interrogate what ActionSA has to offer and why we consider ourselves an alternative. Okay,
well, it's a bit late in the day, to do that. Is it maybe because I asked your guy, where's your Western Cape offering? What's his name? Matthew. I asked Matthew, where's the Western Cape offering? So now I see you guys are putting it together on Thursday.
My intention was initially to do a manifesto launch on the 27th of April, which was Freedom Day. And the date didn't work. And then we were looking at the 4th of May. But we are a newer party, so we are limited in terms of resources, and we had to reconsider the best way to get our manifesto offering out there. And this initiative is how we considered that.
So coming back to that point that you say, a newer party and you're a smaller party, but you guys are part
newer,
of the...
not smaller.
Newer, yeah, exactly. So you guys are part of the Moonshot Pact with the DA and all of the other parties. So what are you guys saying about your partner calling the smaller or the newer parties mercenaries and popcorn parties, and people are wasting their time on these parties, etc. So what's your reaction to that?
Firstly, we're in a multi-party charter, and there is no Moonshot Pact. So
let's call it you guys are part of the
multi-party charter.
Now, one of your partners, the key guys, they say they're the key people. They call the other parties, which are newer and smaller, and you guys are smaller and newer. They call you guys mercenaries, popcorn parties. Why are they coming to contest in the Western Cape? Why would people waste their votes on parties like you? You guys should just leave them aside and focus elsewhere and let them continue to govern the Western Cape.
Yes.
What's your reaction to that?
Well, my response to that is, firstly, it is a democratic party. It is a democratic country, so anybody can contest anywhere that they are allowed to do so. The only compliance we need is with the IEC. We do not need permission from our coalition partners to contest. That's the first thing. But also the name calling and the insults and so on is part of campaigning. Some politicians or parties prefer to focus, on discrediting. I prefer to focus on what I'm saying to the electorate. Yeah. The fact of the matter, Rod, is that the black and coloured communities in the Western Cape constitute 42% being the coloured community and 38% of the voter base, respectively. 60% of the vote sits in the Cape Metro. In the Cape Metro, that 80%, close to 80%. I mean, the number of coloured and black people that live in the suburbs is negligible compared to the people that live on the periphery of the city. Now, when we look at a city like Cape Town, and you go to one area and you go to another area, it becomes a tale of two cities. And suddenly, if you go into Happy Valley or if you go into Dunoon, or when you go to the ground and you engage with these communities, you do not see the kind of service delivery that you would see in Panorama, Plattekloof, in Constantia, in those suburbs. And to add insult to injury, you are dealing with people that are not getting services, but at the same time, you've got this fear-mongering that's happening, where people in the suburbs are in essence told, similar to what is happening at a national level, if we lose the vote, then you guys better understand that you're not going to get services. There's no way where trying to bring about a balance and bring about, services and trying to service everybody results in trying to collapse the other side, because this is what we've seen in other provinces where the resources are taken, from the ratepayers, but the services are diverted. And the services are not getting to the underprivileged areas. I mean, if I speak for my previous constituency in the city of Johannesburg, in as much as the resources by way of taxes and rates and taxes are taken from the suburban communities, the services rendered there are shrinking. And they say that they are being diverted to underprivileged communities, and that is not the case. When you walk through these communities,
but that's a partner of yours who are making those points
in the city, certainly. But as I say, we are in campaign season. what is important is for voters to understand and interrogate party offerings, but also just look at the practical examples.
The
I say
reality.
to people, look at where you live and
Okay.
tell me if this is something that works for you. Because
Okay.
as a voter, certainly in the Western Cape, there's been a lot of racial manipulation of the voter base. You know.
We'll come back to that a bit later. Let me get to some global politics, because you guys are almost a national, you're campaigning nationally as well. So I want to ask, there are two particular touchy issues on the table. Position of in what's happening in Russia and the Ukraine. What is your party's position on how that needs to be dealt with? And what should South Africa's position be?
As ActionSA, we're a party that is primarily informed by a consideration of human rights, and this goes for conflicts, including what is happening in the Middle East.
Let's focus on Russia and Ukraine.
Russia and Ukraine, it's the stance is the same. We condemn the killing of non-combatants in the Ukraine in these war-torn countries, and we believe that the international community needs to do more to intervene in these situations to stop the conflict.
You guys disagree with South Africa's neutral position in almost neutral position in Russia and the Ukraine, or what's your view on South Africa's position that the current government is taking around there?
So when you look at our position with regards to what's happening in Russia and Ukraine and what's happening in the Middle East, the fact of the matter is that there is conflict in both these countries. In one, yes, the circumstances are remarkably different, but I think that our current government is not articulating a position on what is happening in Russia and Ukraine because they are preserving their interests and their friendships with the Russians on that end.
And the issue of what's happening in Palestine and Israel,
like I said,
particularly Gaza.
So what is happening in Palestine and Gaza has been happening for many years. The facts are there. Nobody can deny what has been happening. And as the international community, even if you look at the neighboring Arab countries, they too find themselves wanting the conflict there to stop. You know, when it becomes a matter of communities being denied basic human rights, access to medication, to food, to water, to electricity.
As is happening with the Palestinians.
In the Middle East, yes. When it comes to that, it becomes a violation of human rights. And it goes back to what I was saying, that for us, we basically stand on the side of human rights.
So you guys are then, if the human rights of the Palestinians are being trampled on, let's use that kind of language, then you would say that the Israelis are wrong.
This is a matter that...
are the Israelis wrong for trampling on the human rights of the Palestinians? Because you said you guys are
any violation of human rights is wrong.
So the Israelis are wrong.
What has been happening in Palestine has been happening over many years. There's a matter before the International Court of Justice that has asked the International Court of Justice to rule on that. But our position is very much similar to the Arab League, the OIC, the AU, and the UN on this.
I don't want to hear their view. I want to hear your ActionSA view and your view. You said you stand on the side of human rights.
Absolutely.
So the Israelis are trampling on the rights of the Palestinian people.
By violating their basic human
So you
rights and
agree with that?
denying them water, denying them electricity,
agree with that?
and so on. It's what's happening. It's not
So-
my perspective. It's there. It's
So can I ask you? So why? And people are being killed indiscriminately with bombs, hospitals, and all of that. So why are you guys so reluctant to call it genocide?
It's not ActionSA that's reluctant to call it a genocide. The International Court of Justice did not declare it a genocide either.
Besides let me not continue it. I want to come back to that point because you mentioned the International Court of Justice. So do you support the fact that South Africa took Israel to the International Court of Justice?
With regards to the decision to take Israel to the International Court of Justice.
And for the International Court, because remember you said you want the International Court to declare, and for the International Court of Justice to determine whether that is a genocide.
Mm-hmm.
Do you support the South African position to have done that?
As the South African government, I think that doing that was a clear stance, saying that we are pro-Palestine as the government.
No. Do you agree that the government?
I'm trying to answer the question, but my issue with that is that it's politically opportunistic because it also coincides with the liquidation and the ANC suddenly being able to afford to contest the elections. This is not a political political thing.
I'm not even talking about the ANC.
But it's the ANC government that took
it's a South African government.
Run by the ANC.
No, but it's a South African government. You said that the International Court of Justice has not pronounced.
Yeah.
Right? So the South African government took the Israelis to the International Court of Justice in order to pronounce whether that is genocide. So you're saying you can't call it genocide until that court, because that court has not pronounced. So should that court pronounce that it is genocide, would you then agree that it's
then
genocide?
Then it's a court ruling, Rod. It's a court ruling. As a party, we abide by the rule of law. So we have been quite clear in condemning what has been happening. We've been condemning the
killings,
the conflict in the Middle East, because, like I say, it has been happening for many years, and just the international community could actually do a lot more.
No, we agree on that. We agree on that. I want to get a sense from you. I don't want to harp on it because this interview is not about all of that. But it's important because the issue of Palestine is going to be big in this election, especially in the Western Cape. So would you say that people have expressed outrage at what happened on the 7th of October, but the indiscriminate killing of babies and women and children, even in hospitals, etc. Would you guys be outraged at Israel for doing that?
But we are. We've been condemning, especially the violation of human rights.
Okay.
We have been very consistent in calling for a cessation of hostilities in that area and to allow for the passage of basic needs to the people of Gaza in particular. And, just not attacking hospitals and so on is trampling, is denying those basic human rights. And our position is clear in terms of the support of human rights and the consideration of human rights.
Okay, let's move a bit from there. Let's not get stuck on that. And by the way, I like the way how you said, we say Gaza, you say Gaza.
Yes, it is Gaza.
Okay. How should South Africa position itself to the rest of the African continent?
South Africa has got a myriad challenges internally. And whether you want to consider it in the context of Maslow's hierarchy of needs or whatever it is, it doesn't make sense for us to be dealing with issues on the regional or continental stage until we get our own house in order. Our people are unemployed. Our people are in abject poverty. We've got a high prevalence of substance abuse. We've got criminality. We've got gangsters running rife in the very underprivileged communities. We've got one of the highest prevalences of homelessness. We've got the highest prevalences of gender-based violence and femicide. And we've got still the legacy of apartheid spatial planning to this day. So when it comes to South Africa in relation to other countries and international or continental regional issues, it's very important for us to first stabilize things here at home.
Okay.
And try and fix our economy, get the people into jobs, get people out of poverty, help those that are in addiction, in active addiction, tackle the issue of your drug peddlers, your smugglers, and so on. Recognize the issue of addiction as a disease and assist the addict rather than prosecuting them.
I hear all of that, right? I hear all of that. So what I'm picking up is focus on South Africa. So you saying that focus on South Africa, leave the rest of Africa. We can come there afterwards after we've dealt with the issues in South Africa.
Not leave the rest of Africa.
So
not be oblivious to what's happening in other countries. We don't have that luxury. But prioritize South Africa.
Yeah, but okay, that's fine. I mean, lots of countries prioritize their countries. But my
Not
question
ours.
is our relationship with it, like trade.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we do trade?
Of course, but in
and
order
so
for
on?
us to do trade and to attract foreign direct investment, there needs to be the rule of law. One of the things that has driven business out of our country is the lawlessness, is the corruption, is the gangsterism and the crime that is so rife.
Okay, let's move from that. A big issue in this country is unemployment. It's massive. Over 40%. On the Cape Flats, in the townships, I'm sure you're aware of all of that. It's a massive issue. What are you guys saying? How should we address it? If you guys are in government, whether in national government, how should the unemployment problem be addressed?
So at a national level, it becomes important that we address the issue of the rule of law, that we are seen to be taking a very hard and serious stance on lawlessness and on corruption and growing the economy. Because when you provide an environment that demonstrates stability, you're able to attract investment. And attracting investment is going to contribute to the growth of the economy. And in growing the economy, we want to ensure that it's an inclusive and participative economy, that anybody that wants to get into business is able to get into business, and small businesses are supported.
So what you're saying is address lawlessness, then unemployment would be addressed.
It's not a one solution per issue. we are, in essence, as a country, almost overwhelmed by everything that has fallen flat, at this point in time. So the response to it needs to be a multi-pronged approach.
So give me some indications of that multi-pronged, because the key thing that I heard is address lawlessness, and then people will invest and all of that stuff and so on.
By people investing, attracting direct foreign investment is one of the ways to do that. By ensuring that the economy is stabilized and growing again, we provide an environment that is conducive for businesses to flourish. When businesses flourish, businesses create jobs. Also, as ActionSA, we are very clear on our stance with regards to labor laws. We want to ensure that labor laws enable businesses to function and don't choke them or restrict them. That unions have, while they are important stakeholders, that they don't have a veto right, and we end up with businesses going under because it's not sustainable for them to work. We believe that it's important that people are paid a living wage, a decent living wage, and that that a business is able to get its value for money in return. So a fair trade, a fair exchange of skills for the remuneration.
So would you guys say that the trade unions should have less rights than what they currently have?
We are saying that...
Or the workers?
We are saying that over the last 30 years, unions have become very politicized and basically become affiliates of political parties, and as such have interfered quite a lot in whether it's the public sector, whether it's the business sector, and so on. And we are saying that in as much as unions are a critical stakeholder, they are a stakeholder, but so is business. And it's important that we treat them as a key role player in the economy.
Okay. You spoke quite a bit about crime earlier on. And I mean, crime is also a big issue in this place as well. What will you guys practically do to give people a sense that they live peacefully and they can live in a safe society? Kids can play in the road, women can walk the streets without being fearful of being raped, and so on. So what would you guys practically do to give people that sense?
The issues... Well, if we could bring it to the Western Cape in particular, you talk about unsafe areas and so on. The option of somebody having a job addresses a significant number of socioeconomic challenges. But it's important to also focus on those that resort to crime and so on as a result of not being able to find jobs. When I referred to the importance of entrepreneurs in the economy, if you look at addicts as one demographic, and if you look at reformed gangsters so badly want to make a difference and make good in society, and they want to be engaged, and it's important that there be programs over and above what is happening in the formal sector, where we're looking at the economy and business, formal business and so on. The reality is that once an addict has gone through rehab and they've been clean for so long, and similarly with a reformed gangster coming out of jail, very few of them are embraced back into their families and in their communities. With the addicts, they find themselves on the streets as do reformed gangsters. So it's important that civil society, again, as a government, it's important for me to work with civil society and with communities, because I do not believe that you can work for people without them. When it comes to these two demographics, as an example, I would want to see a collaboration with rehab centers and also organizations working with reformed gangsters, where there are skills development programs that are linked to a business model, so that that addict is able to come in and either put in X amount worth of work, so the same with that, but that it's run as a business by by the civil society sectors, so that there's an element of dignity. The same could be extended to unemployed youth and so on. But I'm using these two as an example because a recovering addict and a reformed gangster are least likely to find employment. So it becomes important that they are at least able to go somewhere and go and learn a new set of skills, participate and earn themselves, even if it's got to be something in the form of a resource bank where you earn X amount of money and you're able to go and get yourself a packet of rice and cooking oil and whatever and go home. Because back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it starts with the stomach. Okay, when you talk to addicts, a lot of them will tell you that sometimes they resort to using just to kill the hunger pains or so they don't feel the cold.
Okay, I hear all of that. That's dealing with the addicts and the reformed gangsters, etc. What would you guys do around policing and law enforcement?
Okay. When it comes to our public service, we would want our police better resourced. The current dynamic between national and this provincial government is one where politics are being played at the expense of the citizens, especially those that live in the Cape Flats. You were asking, what it is that we would do to ensure, and one of those is to ensure that police are better resourced, they are better paid. The same goes for our education, our healthcare service, and so on. Our public servants need to earn a decent wage so that you instill dignity in the job again. You instill pride. The importance of active citizenry is something that cannot be emphasized enough, because those...
I hear that, right? But there's an auntie in Manenberg or an uncle in Googs that are watching you and listening to you, etc. They want to know, besides that the police must be paid better and treated with dignity, etc.
And better resourced.
Better resourced. Is that what ActionSA's offering is in respect of law enforcement and people feeling safer in their communities?
It is part of our offer. When it comes to law enforcement, it becomes a collaborative effort between communities and law enforcement. By better resourcing the police, you try and balance out those statistics of one police officer to 400 and odd people.
Yeah.
And also addressing this acrimony between the distrust. A lot of the illegal firearms that we find on the streets that are killing our very communities are obtained through illicit means and mainly through the police. So we're also looking at a gun buyback program. The idea is to give you something in lieu of this alternative that you've opted for.
What is ActionSA's view about parole and the death sentence?
We believe that the punishment needs to fit the crime. We believe that when you have wronged society, you need to actually pay. We do believe that when you have, served your time for your punishment, you deserve an opportunity to come back, and hence the reformative part. But without the option of coming out and rebuilding your life, the prospects of recidivism are much higher. People are much likely to go back to crime.
So you support parole? People coming out on parole?
that deserve it.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
absolutely, when it comes to hard crimes, to violent crimes, to the more serious offences, we feel that prisoners should be in prison,
Okay.
and that prison should not be this soft life. If you look at what is currently happening, Rod, the government spends 400 rand per prisoner per day for people to get 3 meals in prison. They've got water, they've got electricity, and as opposed to early childhood development, where ECD centres only get 17 rand per child per day. And those are children within centres that are registered. Those that fall outside the system don't benefit from that. So it's almost, the message there is that it's more beneficial.
So they should get less benefits in prison. Those who are in prison.
Prison should be prison.
Okay.
It shouldn't be that your basic human rights are taken away. But it's certainly not right that citizens suffer secondary impact of criminals then going into jail, getting degrees, and
I hear you. The death penalty?
The death penalty. We've had a huge debate on this within ActionSA.
Yes.
And our stance is that we cannot support the death penalty because currently our criminal justice system is a mess.
Okay.
So you'll find people that deserve, if that is a thing, you'll find innocent people being killed.
So you guys don't support the death penalty? No. Okay. You know, throwing foreigners out of South Africa. I said I want to come back to the Africa thing. Throwing foreigners out of South Africa. Is that the position of ActionSA?
So what ActionSA and even our president during his time as the mayor of Johannesburg was very vocal about, and which has been distorted politically and opportunistically, is the fact that, back to the rule of law, we as South African society is buckling under the number of people that need the services and so on.
So must they be thrown out?
They shouldn't be thrown out, but you don't come into our country illegally and go and live in the shadows and not declare yourself. When we go into any other country, we've got to go through the border, declare ourselves to that country. What we're currently finding in South Africa is the high prevalence of people actually just streaming into the country.
Why is your leader so strident when he talks about foreigners? Because, let me give you kudos, because when I read your manifesto, I see there's a more nuanced approach around dealing with foreigners. So why is he being just a politician by being so strident around, because everyone is up in arms about foreigners? He's very strident around foreigners being thrown out.
I don't think we're advocating for foreigners to be thrown out. We are saying that anybody that comes into our country needs to come in and legally and abide by the rule of law.
Whether they're from Africa or they're from other parts of the world.
It doesn't matter where you're from. You don't enter anybody else's country illegally and go and operate in the shadow of the law. And if you look at the impact that it's having on us, you've got entire industries. You've got our spaza shop industry that has been completely taken over. There are almost no South Africans running spaza shops at the moment. Those are not registered businesses.
There must clearly be a reason why that is, and it's South Africans who had those businesses who sold it to foreigners.
Yes.
So why did they do that?
Well, I can't speak for the people that have done it, but reading the broader climate, I think it goes back to a finance issue. When people are running businesses and the businesses are struggling and they're living hand to mouth and something like that, it's similar to the issue of people that resell their RDP houses because they need the money or they want the money. So to finish what I was saying, we are not about throwing people out of the country. We are very clear that if you are in the country, and it links back to my point around corruption, your Department of Home Affairs, your porous borders have contributed to the influx of undocumented foreign nationals. A lot of these people that are running businesses as undocumented foreign nationals are not contributing to our tax base. And by not paying taxes, they are not registered as businesses. They are not even known to be here in the country, but they are selling things for cash. And where that impacts South Africans is that the same influx of people is putting a strain, especially in our informal communities, our townships, our informal settlements and so on. There are huge numbers of undocumented foreign nationals in those areas, and they are not registered, but when they need public services, they need a clinic, they need a school, they need this and that, they then put a strain on the same system. So it becomes difficult from a governance perspective to look at how many children were born in 2017 that are likely to be starting school in 2024, because there's this huge population that is not registered, that is coming into the schools, and corruption contributes to that by people basically paying to have their children placed in school at the expense of South Africans. And last Thursday, I was called by the community of Happy Valley out in Easter River. Rod, there are 7, 8, 10, 12-year-old children languishing on the streets. And I asked some of the community members, what is going on here? Why are there so many children not in school at this time of the day? And we were basically told that it's because the nearest school is full and there is another school that has been built. Now, I find it irresponsible that a plan cannot be made for these children to be bused somewhere and educated instead of missing a year or however long it takes to build that school. I remember growing up in Mannenberg, some of my friends would go to Oggendskof and Middagskof school. It's not impossible to ensure that you bring children in the morning, and while your Oggendskof is dealing with academic activities, your Middagskof is participating in recreational activities. There's a huge challenge in especially the underprivileged communities with regards to recreational facilities and just access to these things to keep our youth employed. And this is why they end up being drawn into crime and gangsterism.
I see quite a number of parties are starting to talk about schooling, people going in the morning and the afternoon, and I see you guys are talking about it as well.
Heard, yeah.
Let's talk about corruption. You mentioned corruption quite a bit and so on. So let me be specific. If there's a serious allegation of corruption against someone, ActionSA, member of parliament, senior member of parliament, even against you, what should happen?
Not what should happen, what would happen.
Yeah, no. Okay.
Firstly, as a public representative of ActionSA, I have agreed to lifestyle audits being conducted. So if my lifestyle does not match my income, I, by virtue of availing myself as a public representative, have also agreed that the party can conduct lifestyle audits. But also, the party is very clear and very big on ethical leadership. And as such, there is no tolerance for our very people, not when we are calling out corruption the way we are and so on. So if there is something like that, the party would certainly conduct a lifestyle audit and investigate, and anybody found guilty would be summarily dismissed from the party. This is what I know in terms of what we've agreed to in the party.
So it's not going to be that they suspend it on full pay and sit at home for a few months and earn their salaries and so on?
Rod, with our party, it's even a matter of ensuring that you serve your constituencies. So the issue of tolerating potential corruption and allowing people. Yes, it's important.
Don't know what's there. That's your people talking.
It's important. That's not my people. There's also very interesting. It's important that we are held to a particular standard, and that nobody is seen to be above the law.
Can I ask you?
Which question of yours did I not answer?
No, don't worry. There's one or two. We can get to that again.
Okay.
But focus on the question that I'm asking. Don't worry about them. So what will you do to ensure that we get the best people in government to come and serve, whether national or provincial? Or will it just be people who subscribe to ActionSA?
Absolutely not.
So what will you guys do to ensure that we get the best people to address the myriad of problems? And you have mentioned lots and much more. What would you go? What's your people's position?
So we have already indicated what our cabinet would look like if we were to come into government. We've named those people and their portfolios, and we've put them out there.
How big is your cabinet? How many people?
18 members.
So and their perks and like the blue lights, 2 houses, 1 house in Cape Town, 1 house in Joburg, and all of those benefits.
Not the gravy train. There will be security where security is necessary.
So you guys are going to cut the perks.
The excessive perks, of course. But I mean, if it is important for somebody in a particular position to have a security detail, to be driven around, etc., those will certainly be in place. There will be no deputy ministers. Departments will be run by competent people where it's not a matter of us trying to do a clean sweep and kick everybody out, but it's important to ensure that best placed people are placed into those positions so that we're able to serve.
What's your position on the touchy subject called the land question?
In terms of
which you know what that land without expropriation and property rights.
Where property rights exist, we do believe in the rebalance. Okay, there is a historic imbalance in terms of property rights. However, the indiscriminate, allocation or whatever of land is irresponsible. It's important to ensure that where land is allocated, whether it's for farming or whatever it is, that it comes with the requisite support. We do not want to sit with a situation like our neighboring countries where you give a farm to someone simply because they say that they want a farm and it doesn't get used.
So do you guys support land expropriation?
We do support expropriation. We do support the issue of the repurposing of unused facilities. If you look at our urban centers in particular, there are a lot of vacant, derelict, vandalized buildings which could be repurposed to affordable student accommodation, as was done in the city of Johannesburg when our president was the mayor there. So we very much are for the rule of law, that yes, these things do need to be addressed, but they do need to be addressed according to the rule of law.
Okay, we've dealt quite a bit with national issues. I think can we go for another 15 minutes?
Sure.
15, 20 minutes. There's a few national issues, but I want to come to the Western Cape. What is your unique offering to the people of this province?
In terms of the people of the Western Cape, ActionSA presents a credible alternative. At this point in time, there's a lot of emotions around the voter base, and parties and their
I smile
stance.
when I hear you say the credible alternative, but we can talk offline about that.
Sure. But with as a candidate in the Western Cape, the communities where I grew up, the communities that I'm related to, I grew up on the Cape Flats, and what is happening if you use Manenberg as opposed to Child, for what's happening across these communities, the racial divisions and so on. As ActionSA, I'm very clear on the fact that the divisions are politically engineered. It's important that the 80% of the population, black and
Politically
colored,
engineered by who?
politicians
Which
that
politicians?
are canvassing for votes, various politicians. Like I said, I don't
Your coalition partner.
the name calling. I address the issue
But sometimes
and
we
what
must
it
call a
is.
spade a spade.
You can.
Yeah.
So when I look at the challenges faced by these communities, instead of trying to persuade the colored voter base that these are your issues, or trying to persuade the black voter base that these are your issues, that divides the vote. And it's a divided vote that results in hung elections. And if you look at what happened in the city of Johannesburg, that's where you've got the instability. Okay, so when you look at the issues impacting the Western Cape, for me as a candidate, it's something that resonates with me. I am firstly, being a woman,
So
the
can I assist
issues
you?
of...
Can I assist you?
Why do I
sorry.
need assistance though?
No. In terms of my question, I want to make it a bit clearer. So how can that divide that you're talking about, the divide between the rich and the poor, and black and white, how can that divide? What would you guys do to narrow that divide?
Okay, so if I can finish
Yes.
first. As a woman, as a female candidate, issues of survivors and victims of gender-based violence and femicide, I stand as the voice of victims and survivors of gender-based violence and femicide. There are also women who find themselves secondary targets of gangsterism with the revenge attacks. If you're a wife, daughter, mother, sister, whatever, of a gangster, you could very well find yourself as a target of revenge attacks as a result of the choices made by the person that has gone into gangsterism. But also, you've got a huge component of our youth and our relatives that are in addiction, in active addiction, that are in the LGBT community being ostracized and often attacked for their sexual identity, as well as those that are relatives and mothers of gangsters and people in prison. So those are issues that do resonate with me, because we either all know or are related to somebody that has in some or other measure been impacted. Coming to the crossover of these of what I'm saying, Rod, is that it's important to understand that gender-based violence, addiction, and the impact of crime and so on does not just affect these communities on the periphery. It affects communities in gated communities and the outskirts of those gated communities as well. So it's important that residents realize that you cannot take an approach that says that's not my problem. I may live in a very secure gated area, but my children end up being a target market for drug smugglers, drug peddlers, because there's money. When I drive out of my gated community, I'm driving out into an unprotected area that is not as safe as where I am. So what is happening in the broader context of the province and the city is something that impacts every single resident. So it becomes a collective effort to ensure that we work together to address the issues that are impacting us.
Mm-hmm. What's your view about the Western Cape wanting more powers from national government?
Currently in our constitution, we've got 3 spheres of government, and each has a distinct responsibility. What drives the desire for a devolution of powers is precisely the acrimony between the national sphere of government and provincial sphere of government. A devolution of powers may be necessary in certain areas. If you look at the law enforcement officers in the Western Cape, they have a very clear role to play. But the police, for example, are a national competence. Defense is a national competence. So it is very important that it isn't something that's done indiscriminately and that ultimately could impact the residents of the Western Cape, because the Western Cape doesn't exist in a bubble. It exists as part of a country. So it's important that it remains part of that country.
Okay. So, you was a premier candidate.
I am.
So should you become the premier, what will you do to give young people a sense of hope and belonging and believing that having an education is not a waste? What will you do as a premier to give them that sense?
Looking at education, it's important that we start with early childhood development. Early childhood development is linked to social development, to health, and so on, because it starts with the pregnant mother, those socioeconomic factors. The support to early childhood development centers, that's 17 Rand a day. There are so many women that are running early childhood development centers, especially in poorer communities, that aren't even able to pay those carers a decent wage. And they often get into trouble while they cannot afford, because they take children whether the parents can pay or not. But speaking to our education system and capacitating the youth through education, it's important that our ECD is capacitated, supported, and so on, so that it forms the cornerstone to foundation phase education. Taking learners through primary school or basic education, we need to tackle it from foundation phase, so that we address this issue of 10-year-old grade 4 learners where 8 out of 10 of them cannot read for meaning. Learning needs to be a comprehensive environment where children are children, where the schools are safe zones. Children can go to school and be safe at schools, and they are protected from the access to drugs and cadre deployment and so on, and actually get educated in a conducive environment where they are taught by competent, qualified educators. So we need to look at the political interference in the education system. We need to look at educators, ensuring that educators are fit for purpose, ensuring that our school environments are safe environments, and ensuring that the curriculum is one that ultimately prepares and equips children to finish school and have a basic skill set. When you take them into secondary school or high school, as ActionSA, we believe in looking at the system of the streams, where there is the vocational training, the academic training, and so on, so that you are able to capacitate the learners, and that also at tertiary institution level, that the courses offered by tertiary institutions are adapted to speak to the future needs of the country.
Okay, so elections is 25 days away, I think? So if no one gets an outright majority in the Western Cape, which I think it might happen, it's going to happen, I think it's going to happen, who will you guys work with and who will you not work with? In the Western Cape, I'm not talking nationally.
In the Western Cape, our position with regards to working with the ANC is very clear. We will not work with the ANC.
Okay, so the ANC is out.
Precisely because of what has been done to the country. If we need to go into opposition benches, we will go into opposition benches, but we are certainly amenable to a coalition. It's not factored into the multi-party charter. The multi-party charter speaks to national government, so it doesn't apply to the Western Cape, but we would certainly speak to like-minded parties.
So mindful of the ANC has been in opposition for 15 years in this province.
Correct.
Right? So, and your multi-charter party calls you guys all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And they there's a divide between the rich and the poor, and white and black, black in the general sense. So you won't work with the ANC?
No.
And who else won't you work with?
Well, we primarily would not go into a coalition with the ANC and similar
EFF.
parties. No. In terms of parties that we would work with, even the parties that we would end up working with. But remember, if there is no outright majority, it becomes a negotiation. So the one scenario is that if nobody gets an outright majority and we don't get into government, we sit in the opposition benches.
Okay.
But even as part of a coalition government, it is our responsibility to hold our coalition partners accountable and to call out what happens. So when we did this in the city of Johannesburg, for example, initially after the 2021 election, ActionSA was calling out issues that we weren't happy with.
So does a possibility exist in the Western Cape that ActionSA might not work with the DA?
In the Western Cape?
Western Cape.
If we cannot reach an agreement, then we go into opposition, into the opposition benches, and we take
or you work with other parties excluding the ANC.
Like I said, we will work with like-minded parties. So, but
Okay.
it becomes a negotiation.
Okay.
So if we're not able to reach an agreement, then we
Okay.
accept that, and we continue to serve the residents on the mandate that we would have been given.
Okay. What are your views about the Western Cape question? And the Western Cape question is where the coloureds are in the majority, the so-called coloureds, and they are a minority in South Africa. What's your position around that?
I just break that question down, because if they're in the majority in the Western Cape and they in the minority, what is the question?
What's the view of the coloured community who feel that they are being done in the Western Cape? What's the ActionSA position?
ActionSA's position is that because the Western Cape, the coloured community is in the majority in the Western Cape, that across the board, your coloured communities in El Dorado Park and in other provinces have got the same concerns and the same issues about not being serviced, about not getting opportunities and so on. But there's also a huge component of the first citizens of this country that have not received the same recognition and benefits and rights as other traditional leaders. And that in the Western Cape, there's a huge component of that in the Western Cape, and I think probably the biggest, as well as in other provinces. Your Northern Cape also has a significant. But with regards to that, in the Western Cape, when looking at that, I believe that a government exists to serve all its citizens equally, whether you're coloured, whether you're black, whether you are white. And they are not, the coloured community in the Western Cape or in other areas of the country, is not wrong in saying that they've been left behind. Under the previous dispensation, coloureds were not white enough. Under the current dispensation, we were not black enough to benefit from your black economic empowerment and so on. However, when it comes to the issues impacting people in the Western Cape, it is very important to recognize that the impact of poverty, of crime, and all these issues impacts impoverished communities equally hard.
Okay, so we're almost done.
Okay.
So you become, your negotiation happens and so on, and they decide you must become the premier. So what are the 5 immediate things that you would do? 3 or 5 immediate that you would do as Premier of the Western Cape. We give you in the first 100 to 150 days. That's about, 6 months?
100 days is just over 3 months.
We give you 150
that's
days.
5 months, 5 to 6 months. I as a government, as a premier, working with civil society and engaging with civil society becomes very important. I believe in a partnership arrangement with civil society, and the discussion with civil society, which is part of what we're wanting to interrogate on Thursday, is that the issue of jobs is something that needs to be prioritized. And some of the short-term, there need to be short-term measures, because some of these things will only materialize further down the line. You're not going to see a turnaround in the economy in the first month, 3 months, or whatever. So working with civil society, it becomes important that there's that partnership, that you are an enabling partner to what civil society is doing to basically benefit and alleviate the impact of these socioeconomic factors on the ground. So I would certainly prioritize my relationships to ensure that in consultation with civil society and communities, that we are able to do what is doable to alleviate in the short term the pressure points. The pressure points being basically your high levels of crime and your unemployment, your hunger, and so on. Working with civil society, these are people that are already on the ground in the form of NGOs and so on, that are better able to work with government in saying, in these communities, as a government, here's what you need to do. Mm-hmm. Going back to the same communities that we are asking to vote for us is another big thing for me, because it really is something that I find an affront when you go and you engage people on the election. Are you going to vote, et cetera, and people turn around and say, we only ever see you guys every 5 years. Mm-hmm. It becomes important for people to understand the importance of active citizenry. Understand what government is supposed to be doing for your communities, in your communities, by participating at a local government level, understanding what needs to happen. Those relationships are a critical part of it, because it then informs the flow of information and accountability between government, civil society, and the ground. So the partnership for me there will assist in ensuring that there is a realistic, sustainable plan. Coming in, there are a lot of issues to address. I can point out to the unemployment. I can point to the issue of the crime, the lawlessness. But it's important to not make promises that are just, easy sells, because people are desperate to hear that I will bring in 1,000 more police and I will do this and I will do that. What I would like to be able to do is engage with communities and be able to take communities along the way with me to say, okay, here are some of the things we're dealing with right now. Here is what we are able to do in the immediate or short term. Here's what we're able to do in the medium term, and here's what is doable in the longer term. And that at every phase, that it remains a working partnership because we as government exist to serve the people that vote for us. And the reason people have lost confidence in politicians is precisely because government, exists at a level there for the next 5 years and only come back here, when it needs votes. It becomes important to be able to engage on an ongoing basis.
Okay. We're almost done. So I know your leader, he's a millionaire. He's not a billionaire yet. I don't think he's a billionaire yet. And to run elections is very expensive. And you guys are contesting in all the provinces, 9 provinces and nationally. So someone needs to pay for this. Who funds ActionSA?
We have a varied model. So we do have donors, and we're very consistent in declaring our donors
so
to the
donors are public.
Yes, it's on the IEC website. There's the party party funding act or something like that. In terms of that, parties are obliged to declare their funding. We've been doing it since we registered. So our big ticket donors are declared. But also we have our councillors that are in our public representatives who tithe to the party. That also contributes. And then those, we rely on volunteerism to a massive extent, and also just digging into our own pockets. If I want to go into a community, into an ocean view, or Imizamo Yethu or Angber or something like that, and I want to go and engage the community, I would either be taking activists with me, and we would go and we would campaign, or if there are local activists there, we would engage with the local activists, give them something to eat. If I do have, you give them something so that they're able to go back home and do so. So we're working like on a shoestring budget, because unlike the bigger parties that we are contesting against, the majority of those parties do receive state funding because they're represented in Parliament.
Yeah. So you guys are going to there as well, then you guys might get state funding as well.
And it would certainly go a long way to enabling us to resource our structures a lot better.
You know about the saying, no? He who pays the piper calls the tune. So some of your big donors, there's some big name people who donate to you guys. Is there anything that they ask in return, or they expect to happen in return?
I serve on the Senate of the party, which is the highest decision-making body. And when we do receive a donation, it's the Senate is informed of it. None of the donations that we have received have been conditional on anything. None of the funding, none of the people that support us in cash, in kind, has been conditional in terms of influencing our policies or our stance on anything.
Okay. Just before, thanks, Angela. Yeah, wait before that question, let me ask her this question. What's the price of a pocket of potatoes?
Currently, depending on where you buy it, you could pay 120 Rand for, if you want a nice up-to-date potatoes, or if you support the samosa on the street, you might get away with it for $60, $70.
Okay, good.
Are you testing me on the bread thing? Hi.
No, there's no. I asked about potatoes, not bread.
Exactly. I saw what you did potatoes.
there. What's the question?
So last week you were on a panel with a lot of politicians,
yes,
and there was one question that was another question. Alan Windy made a comment that he took, I think, 1 billion out of the education and health department, right, to give it to security. And What is your opinion on that? Seeing that is the position that you're gonna want once you guys win, that's the position that you will the seat that you will take. Was it a responsible move for him to do that, or what's your take on that?
My take on that is that while you may need to shuffle funds around, it should not come at the cost of residents. Yes, you do have a budget, an annual budget, okay? And education, health, and these issues do get factored into that budget. And if a school or a hospital is a priority in an area and it needs to be done within a certain time frame, it needs to be done in that time frame. And you basically, when it comes to taking it into security, it goes back to the issue of ensuring that your police are better resourced and equipped to be able to protect communities. Because what this currently indicates, if you look at GF Worcester Hospital, it existed in JF Worcester. Okay, well, I don't know what his first name was. Exactly, it was some call it GF, some call it JF. So if you look at GF Worcester Hospital in Marienburg, it was there when I was growing up, and it was supposed to have been moved, and it was supposed to have been rebuilt in a specific time frame. Things like that do need to be prioritized because now it impacts the community that they don't have a local hospital. It impacts communities when schools aren't built and completed. So when you do have this much available to you, you need to take those decisions, and it's not an easy decision to make. But it's important to also consider that in taking this away, which communities are hardest hit by it? Is there an alternative clinic, hospital, or something? When it comes to not completing the schools, what is your interim plan to deal with that?
My opinion on it is you're taking away from the education and from the health, right? So who is it going to affect? It's going to affect. It's not going to affect the people in Constantia.
No.
So you're taking away from the Cape Flats, really.
Yes.
And that for me, it's bothersome.
Yes.
Really, to be honest.
But that's why I'm saying it's important to consider who this affects, because when a school is not built, it does not affect a certain demographic. It affects the people in the already impoverished communities. Yeah. So for me, it goes back to the issue of that consultative relationship, because there's this that needs to happen, there's this that needs to happen, the same as we do in our families when we, do we go to Durban on holiday or do we fix what needs to be fixed here at home? There's an opportunity cost for everything, but you can never be oppressing the same communities that are already oppressed by not fulfilling your political promises to complete hospitals, to have the clinics. Even the clinics that are operating are turning away droves of people on a daily basis. And I was called by some of our activists, and I said to them, firstly, engage whoever is turning people away and understand what is happening, because communities now turn on the person in front of them. When it is a government responsibility to look at the issue of resources.
The Premier decided that. So Angela, I can foresee your negotiations post the elections are going to be very interesting in terms of who you're going to co-govern with or so on. So thanks for being with us. I hope it wasn't too tough.
It's politics.
It's ordinary people wanting to know what ActionSA is standing for. So thanks for coming out. We wish you well.
Thank you.
We'll do the feel-good moment. So we not just do the heavy stuff and so on. We do a feel-good moment. So there's a few feel-good moments for the week for me. The one is the fact that we had the Cape Town International Jazz Festival back at the CTICC after absence of 4 years. And I had the privilege to watch Tunde of Lighthouse Family, one of my favorite bands, to perform. So that's my one feel-good moment. So well done to the folks for bringing back the Cape Town International Jazz Festival. The second feel-good moment is my local team that I support, Mamelodi Sundowns, for winning the Premier League Championship. And my final feel-good moment is a very, very good friend of mine, a brother of mine, Dr. Harold Adams, who's for winning the Steve Tshwete Lifetime Achievement Awards in sport. He was a SACOS 800-meter athletics champion back in the day. He was a athletics team captain as well. So Harold has won the Lifetime Steve Tshwete Achievement Awards. So that's our feel-good moment for the week. Next week we will have another candidate, one of the up-and-coming ones, new ones. We'll have a chat with them. I hope that ActionSA has sufficiently given you an indication of whether you're going to vote for them or not. It's going to be an interesting election. So you will watch, you can view this this chat on the YouTube channel of Cape Conscious Media or Rod's Views. It would be uploaded, and you can watch it on the Facebook page of Cape Conscious Media as well. So thanks for joining us. All the best. Thanks, Angela. Are we still...
Don't worry about a thing.